अभी स्टार्ट नहीं करे बात मैंने। Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. I would like to introduce myself. I am Kapil Dand, an educator. Yes, I am an educator. I take care of the education of the students and author of few economics books. It's my request with everyone, please switch off your mic. Okay, again, hello everyone and welcomes to today's session. I would like to introduce myself again. I am Kapil Dand, an educator and author of few economics books. I am teaching from last 2 decades in online teaching and course development from last 5 years. Everyone, a recorded version of this webinar will be available to all of you and link of the same will be shared to all. We would do the question answer session at the end, and in between you can type your questions and I could take care of that. Related materials would be mailed to all of you who attend this session. We will start with discussion with Indian economics, then on how to teach macroeconomics online, then we will discuss Bloom's taxonomy based questions. So everyone, again, welcome. So the very first query which I generated, which I got from most of the teacher, how to teach Indian economics and make it more interesting and enjoyable for the students. I guess many of you have the same query. It is really very difficult to make Indian economics more interesting because it is already very interesting topic. Since it is already very interesting, so how could we make it more interesting? It is really very difficult. When we are giving the online classes to our students, the very first thing, give the student chapter plan, what we are supposed to teach in the class. And speed of the lecture should be very moderate, very but in a manner so that student may be understand it, because you must have understand it's a most of the time a sort of the one side communication. We are not able to see the student face, student reaction, as we do have a privilege in the face to face class. So when we are giving the lecture to the students, first of all there are the couple of the things which must be taken into mind. The pace of chapter should be slow. Every point should be taken care of, and we can't assume that a person already knows the topic. Teach the student like a student, not like a teacher. Because if I assume that student knows it, it would be really very difficult for the student in the online education to get the pace of the teacher, because it's only a single-sided communication, a sort of the single one-way communication. It is very difficult for student to ask the question again and again, because the student sometimes hesitates to ask the question even in the class. So in the online class, he has a privilege to just ignore the question. I want to explain you, before discussing this thing, a very basic thing I want to explain you, how to make the student intelligent. I welcome your answers. Please, can you share how can you make the student intelligent? Anyone?
By making them unknown to known.
Definitely by making them unknown to known. And any other reason, any other way out? It's really very good. Uh,
Yeah, we just provide them fundamental concepts to history, and then take them into the present scenario and then to the future in economics.
Definitely, if we want to generate the interest, I am talking about very basic thing. When you are giving the online classes, let us pause how to make a student intelligent. Let us suppose there are the two students and both have the 1000 doubts. How could we choose between these two students which one is more intelligent and which one is not? It is really very difficult. Basically,
So,
every student every student have load of the doubts. But if I encourage Mr. B to ask a query, once he asks the query, there are the very big changes happens in his life. One, he become more intelligent than A, and second one, this is a turning point in his life also, because every question makes him more intelligent person than the person before asking that question. It's mean B become more intelligent after asking the question. Case of however, in the case of the A remains the same just because he lacks to ask the question. So even in the online education, we should encourage the students to ask the questions. Once he asks the question, every question he asks would make him more intelligent. It is a very simple and 2 minute rule to make the student intelligent, just to ask the question, just make him to ask the questions. So they are very curious. So when we people are teaching the Indian economics, and if we think it's a theoretical subject, it's a very boring subject, how could we teach the student in a very interesting way? The very first problem lies here. It is not a boring subject. It is one of the most interesting subject. Even though teaching the Indian economics would be really very difficult, because it needs the knowledge of the microeconomics as well as macroeconomics. So how each and every chapter is very interesting, and how we can make it more interesting, I am discussing one by one. Now I am really happy nobody is disturbing the class. So I am starting with the very first topic, very first chapter, Indian economy on the eve of independence. When we start to teach the Indian economy on the eve of independence, tell them the importance of the chapter. Tell them knowledge of this and different aspects of economy on the eve of independence would help you to would help you and enable you to understand how our economy progresses. You would be able to admire the achievements which we achieved rather than always complaining on the complaining side. When we are talking about the demographic conditions, demographic data on the eve of independence, it was shows the very dismissible position of the India. Just before starting the chapter, discuss them. Even on the eve of independence, how miserable our infant mortality rate was, what was our literacy rate. Just discuss with them. Discuss for a very 2 or 3 minutes all the miserable situations. How does their trade policies makes the wealth drain from the India? How miserable situations of our industries was, and after that, and how miserable our agriculture system was at that time. How 75% of the population which is directly dependent upon the agriculture sector not able to produce enough food for the remaining one third, 25% even. When you start explaining it before giving the lecture, students' interest has already been generated. After that, explain them. Status of Indian economy before the colonial rule, low level of development. Tell them it was only 0.5% per growth rate, per capita growth rate on the eve of the independence. And after that, now when we people are talking about the 8%, 7%, 6%, it's a remarkable growth rate. And tell them about the agriculture situation on the eve of the independence, and make it more interesting. Just tell them 75% population, don't just read it from the books. In order to make interest, you have to be add some of the very good vocabulary in your lecture. Just tell them how miserable it was for India when 75% population, which was directly dependent upon the agriculture sector, was not able to live their life properly. Most of them are poor. Most of them are facing problems. They are the landless labor. Even then, tell them about the land revenue system, how bad the land revenue system was. So, after that, tell them if we are talking about the Indian economy, if we want to study about Indian economy, we would read about, we would understand about the Indian economy when we divide the Indian economy into three parts: agriculture sector, producer sector, and foreign trade. Tertiary sector definitely, and foreign trade. When you start teaching them these things, definitely before lecture, their curious mind would start taking the interest in the chapter and ask you lot of the queries. And if when we are talking about the foreign trade, tell them how their policies makes the wealth train from the India, and moreover tell them in detail how when they charge the very high export duty sorry when they charge very high export duty from the Indian finished goods, how it affects over market overall, how it devastated over industries, and when they charge no export duty on the raw material, when they give the when they give the way of to free export of the raw material from our economy, how it make the shortage of the raw material and other essential items in our nations, and how the wealth, how the taxes which we received from the export and import, how it does not comes into our economy. Basically, you are supposed to tell them before starting the chapter about how the wealth drain is taken place. How does the money over export surplus does not result into the inflow of the cash and gold and silver coins? How they deduct this amount for the expenses incurred by the offices set up in the Britain to rule India, and for the fights, for the wars they do in India itself. So hope if you want to have any query about the any type of topic in this, you should have asked me. I am taking 2 minutes of question answer session for Indian economy on the eve of independence. If there is any topic which you think you want to have some conceptual clarity or other type of clarity, please ask me about this. Then I am going to reach to the next topic. In fact, I am sharing with you. I will give the access to each and every one of you of this website, of my website, uh, and you could have used the similar type of the questions and similar type of the structure with your students also. Basically, look here, if you are able to see it, uh, after every topic, let us suppose I teach them status of Indian economy before colonial rule. After that, every time I give them, after a very small topic, I give them, wait for a minute. After every small topic, I give them quick acid test. So it is very important to interact with them frequently. Don't ask the question after complete lecture. After giving them the lecture of 5 and 10 minutes, you should ask the queries, you should ask the questions with them so that their interest does not break. Yes, anyone? There's a lot of the chats which is going on. Yeah, you can ask the question, please. How much we need to cover the data? Okay, Miss Pooja Sharma was saying how much we need to cover the data. Basically, uh, NCERT CBSE will not ask for the data directly. However, uh, uh, Yeah, I will
But
take.
still, if more stress can be given on that part of the teaching.
Okay, sure. I will. I will do it. Please don't mute me. Please don't mute me. It is really very difficult if you mute me again and again. Uh, Ma'am, will you please ask your question again? If I'm able to understand, you want to ask me how to teach the classes online, uh, or technicality about the part, technicality part. Is it? Okay. The question which I was covering about the data. How much data student need to learn? Basically, data makes the answer very important, very interesting. You can explain the student. Definitely, data is not going to be asked by the CBSE directly to you. However, if you explain, if you present explain your answer with the help of data, यानी कि if you add the data in your answer from the NCRT only, it will definitely include the makes the answer more attractive for the teachers. And in fact, you can explain them a couple of the lines of the data would be as good as the couple of the paragraph. So if any information spotted by the data, that information would be appreciated by the teachers as well as it is appreciated by the examiner also. However, no deduction of the marks would take place if the data is not presented and not asked in the question. And CBSE specifically mentioned it, they are not going to be asked the data. Yep, it is a very big problem. NCRT data is not revised, but if we are talking about the data, we should mention the source. Students should mention the source if we use the data from any other source. But it is always preferred if that data is available in the NCRT, you should use the data of NCRT only. Student can use the other data by presenting the data of the NCRT, by giving the data of NCRT. After that, they give the source, and according to this source, the current figure is this. You could have write, the student could have write this. The next question is, NCRT is such an interesting book, helps students to understand. Yes, definitely. NCRT is very beautiful book. Again, I'm not audible. No, I am audible. Okay. So it is clear to all of you. So if there is any specific doubt, please, if there is any specific doubt regarding the first topic, you should have asked me, please. So, Indian economy on the eve of independence, if there is a specific topic, I am talking about the topic, so you may ask about that. Status of Indian economy before the British colonial rule, agriculture on the eve of the Indian economy, industrial sector on the eve of the Indian economy, about foreign trade, import substitution policy, demographic condition, occupational structure, infrastructure, and definitely good things made by the Britishers, and good contributions made by the Britishers. Okay, uh, Ms. Jayalakshmi want to ask about the occupational structure. Uh, in fact, I am going to provide this all of this syllabus and case-based studies. Definitely, we will cover the case-based questions in our lecture. Basically, when we start the occupational structure, the problem we notice while teaching it, because it is not mentioned in the NCRT and other books, you should first explain the student what exactly the occupational structure is. As I opened it, occupational structure refers to the aggregate distribution of the occupations in the society classified according to skills level, economic function, or social status. Uh, Without explaining the concept of the occupational structure, when we start explaining the occupational structure, again student would lose the interest. it would be very difficult for student to understand the occupational structure without the definition of occupational structure. Just because it is not present in the NCERT or other book, it doesn't mean that you should not tell him. So every student, if we are taking care of the particular topic, first of all, you should understand whether that topic definition or whether that topic is clear to the students or not. It is very difficult for the students, for every student to understand what exactly the occupational structure is. And without explaining occupational structure, when we start explaining the occupational structure and giving them the data, student may not get that much interest. Tell them just occupational structure is going to be tell us the different type of the population and different proportion of the population engaged in the different occupations. So India's occupational structure at that time was this. Even though there is no harm when you people are teaching the Indian economy on the eve of independence, tell them current occupational structure is this. So student is able to relate it. Student is able to relate it, and after that you can give the task to the students. And what do you think why our occupational structure has been changing so dramatically? So you should have asked this. I hope we should go for the next topic, or basically, when I'm talking about agrarian economy, we could say that India is agrarian economy because 85% directly population directly or indirectly depend upon the agriculture sector. It is not really very difficult to explain Indian economy as an agrarian economy without the occupational structure. Definitely, it is also part of the occupational structure. It is not a very big changes which take place in the case-based questions. We are going to be discuss it. I am coming on the next topic. Pushpendra Rana sir, sir, please add on this thing and explain Miss Isha Sharma about the pattern. Pushpendra Rana sir is in between us, so he would explain you in very detail. We had some workshop with this. Pushpender Rana sir, if you could on your mic and tell her about the doubts.
Good evening, everyone.
Pushpendra, good
From
evening.
this year, am I audible to everyone?
Yes sir, you are audible.
Yes. Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. From this year, 20% will be objective type questions and
Yes sir, you are audible.
10% would be case studies and source-based questions. Most probably, there will be 4-mark question of case study related to case study in macroeconomics, and 4-mark question will be there in Indian economic development. And 20%, that is 16 marks question will be OTQ. But what will be the exact that we will see in sample paper? It is as per the CBSE circular that there will be 20% OTQ question this year, not 25% like last year. Yes, sir. The rest will be the same.
And 10% would be the case study based question.
Case study and source.
Source based question.
Source like diagrams or that database tables. It was last year also, sir, one question in Indian economic development.
Definitely,
Like
yeah. Definitely,
Yes.
even in last year CBSE sample question paper, source based question was there.
Yes, sir, it was there.
It was there. When I'm talking about source based question, what exactly the source based question is? In the source, please switch off your mic, sir, please. Okay. Basically, source based questions are those questions in which, with the help of certain source, newspaper clipping, or other type of news, a news is present to you or data is given to you. On the basis of that data, they may ask you on the comment on it, and they may even ask you about the reasoning part over this. We are going to be discuss this on the Bloom's taxonomy based questions about that thing. It's a source-based question, so source-based question are not very difficult. Student could have scored it very easily in these type of questions because the whole of the data and whole of the change is given to him. The only thing he has to analyze the data or just represent the data. Sometimes they give you the very simple question just to tell that how according to this data the comparison is taking place between those two states or other type of things. Then in that case it is just a representation of the data. By representation of the data student can get the full marks. But sometimes teacher may ask you the reason behind these changes. That would be the analytical based question. Next one. Yeah, weightage for the Indian economy and macroeconomy would be of 40 marks. So I am talking about the next topic, and also I am taking care of your other question. Most of the teacher asked me why Indian economics is shifted to the class 12th and from the class 11th. Why Indian economics introduced in the class 12th? It is really very difficult to teach Indian economics. In fact, when I am talking about this chapter, Indian economy between 1947 to 1991, is it possible to explain reforms or talking about the bank policy or RBI policies without explaining them the monetary policy? Just imagine the plight of the student when he has to study the reforms period and liberalization, and when I'm talking about the liberalization, when the reforms in the banking sector without the knowledge of the bank, without the knowledge of the monetary policy. They have to understand the tax reforms without the knowledge of the budget. It is really very difficult to do the justice with Indian economics without the knowledge of the macroeconomics. And one most common thing which I am seeing during this time period, teachers are speeding up their course like hell. Most of the teachers already covered up 5 and 6 chapters of the Indian economy. It's mean within this month, end of this month, they would have completed the Indian economy. Is it justice with the students? Just give them some time. When we teach them a topic, give them time to analyze those topics, to go through these topics, to discuss again and again different aspects of that topic before shifting on the other topic. So, is there is any doubt? Please, some of the teachers, if somebody finds a question very important, then Pushpinder Rana sir, if there is any important question which I missed in the typing, please आप mic अपना on कर by on your mic, please suggest that to me. Okay.
Yes, sir.
If somebody type gives some important question in the chat because sometime I missed it, please
Yes,
mention
sir.
it.
I will take care.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, sir. So when I am talking about the Indian economy in 1947 to 1991, before explaining this chapter, discuss with the student all these 6 aspects of the chapter. Ask them how much it was difficult for our forefathers to choose the economic system, because we were definitely a ruled state. We were a colonial government of the Britain, and Britain's economic policies was only to take care of interest of their home country rather than welfare of our domestic economy. So now we are the master of our own destiny. We have to choose the economic system, and it would be very difficult for our forefathers just to give them idea ki which economic system would be best for us. At that time, when you teach them about the mixed economy, capitalist economy, and socialist economy, even though it is not available, it's given in the bracket, in the box in the NCERT, but explain it in details the drawbacks of the capitalist system and the drawbacks of the socialist system. along with their benefits. And then explain them why we choose the mixed economy and what was our motive at that time. Maybe possible in today's world we could have said that capitalist economy is a good system for us and we are closing down our public sector industries. But it may be good for today. But at that time, why we choose this mixed economy? Make a very detailed discussion with the students so that they would have able to understand the gravity of the importance of choosing the economic system as a mixed economy and what was the reason behind that. And after that, tell them about the economic planning and what was the objective of our economic planning. Objectives, which is termed as the GEMS: growth, equity, modernization, self-reliance. If you are already taught them budget, as you could have related them with the budget chapter, how does the objective of the budget chapter and objective of the planning are almost similar. You could have explained this to them. So after that, in order to achieve those objectives, why mixed economy is important? Because when we allow the private sector in our economy, definitely our motive was to accelerate the economic growth. So you should have explained it in the start. These are the things which we are going to be discussed in the class. And tell them, before explaining them the land reforms and the new agriculture strategy, ask them, this was the problem which you already studied in previous chapter. What was the situation of Indian farmers? They are facing unfair land revenue system. There is a lack of the modern technology. They depend upon the monsoon for their irrigation facility. There was forced commercialization of crop. So, if you would be the policy maker, let the students think. Give them the task. If you would be the policy maker, what would the policies you would have made? And you will be surprised. Most of the students will come up with the idea, sir, we will abolish the Jamindari system and do the land reforms. After that, when you already seed up the idea about abolition of the Jamindari system, now it would be easier for you and it would be interesting for the student to understand what would be the land reforms. And he would definitely take participate in the class and the land when you start teaching land reforms. Otherwise, it would be very difficult. And ask them why their farmers are definitely there is an unrest among the farmers. Tell them because land reforms are not properly successful. What was the drawbacks of the land reforms? In a very simple way, you should have explained them. If we choose the Indian first IPR, Industrial Policy Resolution, introduced in the 1948. After that, in which we definitely introduced the mixed economic system. After that, explain them the IPR 1956, 3 strategies. Why there was a need of the public sector? Why public sector was required? Tell them, because the private sector does not have the wealth or capital to invest in the big sector economy. Even if they do have the investment, India was a very poor country. It lacks the demand. Because it lacks the demand, it does not give the incentive to the producer. It does not give the encouragement to the producer to take the risk because of the lack of demand. That's why government need to be entering into the industry. इसलिए उसे आना पड़ा इंडस्ट्रीज के अंदर. So instead of making it lecture, make it a story. If you teach the Indian economic like a story and explain every aspect, student is going to take interest. Small scale sector industry itself is a very big topic. You could have explained it in a very detail and it's a very interesting topic. Ask the students what are the small scale industries, what type of small factories they see around them, and whether they choose the labor intensive job or capital intensive job, how it helps to improve the level of employment, how they help to improve the country's foreign exchange, and tell them about the import substitution policy. It is very important policy because import substitution policy, if you relate the import substitution policy from the of our domestic industry. It would be really very interesting for the student. So I feel Indian economy between 1947 and 1991 is a policy which cannot be teased without the Indian economy on the eve of independence. There are the very bad decisions which we made, but there was a reason behind it. And one of the most important that decision which we take in our policy is of the license policy. But what was the reason for the license policy? How could we not allow a person, even he has a capacity to produce more goods, not allow him to produce more goods, to take the permission from the government to produce more goods? It's something like that. I could have teach 1000 students very easily online, but government imposed the limit. No, you should have teach only 250. It's really very bad. Should the government, how government impose the limit? Tell them, explain them. It is because we do not want increase in the supply, increase in the supply so that all the industries would suffer. So is it possible to explain the students that government choose this license policy and not allow the producers to increase the production without doing the concept of market? It's not possible. In 11th, he had already studied the market, so we could have explained him that increase in the output without planning may cause surplus in the market, due to which market price of the product may fall and industry may suffer the loss, and some of the industries may be locked down, and country may fall into the situation like a Great Depression, when there was excess stock in the market and definitely there was no one to buy it, which leads to the Great Depression. When you relate it the one topic with the other topic, students are going to be enjoy it like a hell, and they are going to be score good marks. And you should have a belief on the student that they are able to interrelate the topics, because you teach them, you put your best efforts in order to explain those topics to the student in class 11. You already teach them. I suggest macro should be taught first, after that Indian economy should be taught if we want to do the justice. However, if at the time of revision we can include these topics, even though if we started Indian economic first. So everyone please tell me the reason, ask me the doubts if you do have any type of doubt.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, I want to ask what is the actual difference between, like, how to tell the student the difference between socialist economy and centrally planned economy? A little bit of, if there is a difference. Socialist and or is it exactly the same?
No, basically there is a difference between the socialist economy and centrally planned economy.
Yeah.
In China, they choose the system of the centrally planned economy, and in Russia, they choose the system of the socialist economy. There was a little bit difference. Centrally planned economy allow the private sector to do the production, but they have the control over the private sector to what to produce and what should be the price and other type of the things. So I don't think so class 11 students need to be understand the difference in very detail, but you should have give them the idea of your one line answer that this would be the difference between the centrally planned economy and socialist economy. And by giving them the example, which countries adopted the socialist economy structure and which country adopted the centrally planned economy. And now we notice, we all are witnessing that centrally planned economy works better as compared to the socialist economy, because in socialist economy, most of the manufacturing sectors owned by the only public sector, which leads to the corruption and other type of things. It's a very good question, but definitely we we should give the example, we should give them the example, we should give them the countries, and we should encourage the student to explore after this on. But because if you are going to be discuss it in detail in the class, the purpose of class would have been defined, but definitely you should take this question with the students if they ask you directly. Otherwise, I don't want to instill this doubt. Is lead this question to the in the class. Yep, please. Any other person? Okay. So I have one unique problem. Whenever we teach Indian economics problem, some of the students lacks respect with the country and they feel they want to go abroad to earn and well. Okay. Uh, Mr. Revati Narayan asked a very good question. They talk when we start teaching about the Indian economy and talk about the problems of the Indian economy. Some of the students starting disrespecting our Indian economy, not respecting our the achievement we achieved. But this maybe happened when we talk about the drawbacks and bad decisions, bad policies adopted by the country, without telling them what was the reason behind that and how much we could have improved. And when students start respecting it, tell them that it is an opportunity for you, because India is a developing country. Growth opportunities India is more as compared to others. You can do India better. There is a very less scope in the developed countries because they already developed, and there is a very less scope of the new entrepreneurs. Just tell them how the disparity in the income and wealth has been generated in the America. And if we ignore the exception of the .com IT revolution, it is really very difficult for in America to be a new entrepreneur. It is now a very difficult. Just IT revolution definitely helps to to build up the new millionaires in the America. But other than IT revolution, there are the other sector in which new industries are not getting benefits because of a cartel system already taken by the MNCs. Okay. Institutional reforms would be the next topic. Archana, we will definitely share it. Definitely, Preeti, it's a very good idea. We should have encouraged the student to collect the data and weightage to their explanation. Yeah. Any other doubt? So I guess we should go for the third chapter. We are not going to be discuss every topic because I think till now there are the only very first 5 chapters which we are going to be discussed with the students. You could have asked any specific academic question now on this topic. If there is any academic question, you should have asked me, please. Oh, hope there is a no question. So at least give me your beautiful smiles on the chat. If everything is clear to you and you don't have any type of doubts till now. Okay. So I am coming to the next topic. Okay, fantastic. So after that, we are talking about economic reforms after 1991. How many of you think that economic reforms, because you all are the teachers, we could have take the discussion to the next level. Economic reforms in India are delayed. Economic reforms in India are delayed. How many of you think? And what was the reason behind that? Definitely. Economic reforms. So when we are starting to explain it to the students, we should have tell them, even though we have to be include some non-economic issues in this, but after that, you should have explained them how, because you are a teacher, you already do have a knowledge. You can give a prior knowledge to the student about the comparison between the Indian economy with other countries like Pakistan and China. Tell them how India's planning system, 5-year plan system was adopted by the China and Pakistan after its successful implementation. But what happened? after 1956, we changed our economic policies after 3.5 decades in 1991. And what happened in the China? First of all, they include the Grape Leaf policy. After that great proletarian cultural revolution, until 1978, they introduced the reforms. Yani it's mean that in 28 years, they changed the economic policies 3 times. And we took it 35 years to change the one economic policies. So, it was a really very missed opportunity. It's opportunity which we missed, India missed. When we seen China adopting a LPG policy of LPG and successfully implemented it, we should have adopted. But because of some political crisis, death of the Indira Gandhi, coming of the new Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, after he tried to introduce the reforms, but after that again the government changes, and there were the period when there are the small type period governments, when the new government comes and old government goes. So till 91 we do have the political instability. That's why we are not able to take the economic decisions. But in 1991 we are forced to change the adopt the new economic policies. Explain the students what was the reason before explaining this. In 35 years, the purpose of the mixed economy and planned economy has already been fulfilled. But after that, we delayed it unnecessary. Because we delayed it unnecessary, it was a really become a burden. The benefits become turned into a drawbacks. And the drawbacks which were not visible is quite visible till 1991. Explain them all those drawbacks. Red tapeism, problem of the red tapeism, problem of the prolonged license system. License system should have been abolished when the Indian industries has been developed. Once we starting producing load of the other goods, after that license system should have been abolished. India become a developing country from the underdeveloped country. The day when we realize that we become developing country and no longer become underdeveloped country, so we should have abolished the license policy on that date itself. But it continued till 1991, which dearly cost us. So explain them what was the reason behind that. We don't have the foreign exchange reserve. In order to explain the foreign exchange reserve, if the student has already the knowledge of the foreign exchange, it would be really good for him. If he knows why we need the foreign exchange, why we demand the foreign exchange, it would be very easy. That's why CBSE gives the macroeconomics first part and Indian economics on the second part. But at the time of revision, we could cover that thing. So explain them how much less foreign exchange reserve we had, how the over inflation, and explain that about the little bit about it was inflation which was not demand pull, cost push inflation. How does the inflation increases in the economy? How does the corruption handicap our whole economy? How low growth rate we have? How much unemployment has been caused because of this license system only? Because new industries are not getting license to start it, even though there was a demand. So these were the reason. So explain them about the economic scenario in 1991 before explaining the chapter, and ask them what would you do in these situations. When you give them the idea, the problems Indian economy faces on the eve of 1990, in fact we should say, ask them what would you do. It would be very easy for students to understand when you relate it from the previous chapter. Just tell them, for example, it is very beautifully explained in the NCERT also, in fact, reforms in the industrial sector in the topic. Just tell them there was a license system, what we should do. He would simply say that we should abolish the license system. And at that time you should ask me, we should abolish the license system but must have some control over these industries, otherwise it is okay, we should remove it. Ask them It's the government which deciding the market prices. He would say it himself. Let him think. He would give you the answer. I'm very sure. He will say that. Let the market forces decide the demand and supply. In fact, in this, government role would be reduced. Government need not to be interfere when market forces are allowed to decide the price with the help of the free market demand and industry supply. It would be easy for them. When you tell them कि small scale industries are also is a hurdle for the developing a new big industries. So he will tell them कि the some of the industries should be de-reserved and explain them कि when we are most of the industries are occupied uh, most of the industries were reserved for the only public sector. They would say that they should be privatized. So instead of giving them answer, prompt them to give the answer. Tell them the problem and ask for the solution, and answer would be the same, whatever policy makers did. So give them some respect. When you start giving respect to the student is going to be give his extraordinary participate. So after that, new economic policies. After I talk about the new economic policies, divide them, explain them. There is a stabilizing and structural reforms. Stabilizing is a temporary problems to solve the temporary problems. Structural reforms to make the big and structural changes in the economic system. Explain them about the liberalization, privatization, and globalization, their effects. And at the end of this chapter, one should ask the students why agriculture sector is not included in this. It was a very big drawback of the economic policies after 1991. Even today, we could say that agriculture sector is neglected. When in today's during this COVID-19 problem, it's the farmers which are the one of the most important segment for us. We are definitely doing lot of the PR activities for the doctors, for the soldiers, but farmers should get the applause for this. Even then 50% population depend upon the agriculture sector, around about 50% population directly depend upon the agriculture sector even now. But they were neglected during the LPG reforms. So tell them. Any other doubt? Definitely we will discuss it, but today, Shashwat, we are going to be discuss very first 5 chapters. After that, in the next workshop, we will discuss about the other chapters. Why you want to discuss comparative development first? Okay. How many industries are at present reserved for the public sector? In fact, for public sector, it's only the nuclear as well as railways. It is reserved for the public sector. Otherwise, all the other sectors, even then defense has been open for the private sector. So, almost we could say that there is almost no industry which is reserved for the public sector. Now, it is public sector is working in many industries, but they are not only reserved for the public sector. These are the only 2 sectors. Definitely, we will talk about the we should talk about the GST in the tax reforms. When we are talking about the liberalization, in the liberalization we talk about the reforms. So GST should be taught when we talk about the tax reforms. Or you want to ask me about the specific question about the GST? Rajesh, please tell me. So, I hope there is no other specific question. Now you could have asked the academic question according to the economic reforms 1991. I am giving you only 1 minute to ask the.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yes, very good evening.
Sir, actually, I want to ask how much details should be covered in regarding the GST,
Uh,
GST and demonetization.
GST and demonetization. Basically, CBSE already mentioned it in that it's the only introduction part. You should have explained
Okay.
that GST. Explain a little bit about the CGST and SGST.
Okay.
It's okay. And what was the purpose? Because we are teaching the economics as a subject. That's why what is in GST and compliances of GST is not very important. What is
Yes.
more important? What is the purpose of GST and why it is introduced us? What are the limitations which the states, because of which some states are not happy in GST? Division of the GST between the state as well as center and the problem faced by the states. Otherwise, moreover, it is a new topic, so you should have explained him that importance and benefits of the GST, how it makes the business simple, how it makes the tax filing is a simpler. You should have explained these type of topic. And again, when we are teaching about them the demonetization, explain them the reason and the motives behind the demonetization just, and how much it is successful. Everybody knows that we should not discourage the students if they say otherwise. Definitely we should know it was not very much successful because most of the money came back, and corruption is even in today's digital currency supply is more as compared to that, and growth rate is even the growth rate in the printing money currency is more. So all the objectives had not been fulfilled, but the motive behind it was very good. So explain them, and explain them. You should have write the good points, the motives in a positives of the demonetization.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Okay, welcome. Any other doubt? Okay. Disinvestment lead to privatization. One is the means and later is end. Okay. Jyoti Bansal asked me the question. She asked me, disinvestment leads to privatization. One is the mean and other is the end. Actually, my camera battery is going to be off very soon. We will even if my camera is not working, we will continue the lecture through my voice. I will change the screen. Okay. Disinvestment leads to the privatization. One is means and later is end. Definitely, disinvestment leads to the privatization. Privatization leads to the disinvestment. You can't say that what is the cause and what is the effect. Disinvestment is one of the way of the privatization. Disinvestment implies selling a part of the operations or shifting the part of its operation, selling the part of the shares or the whole company to the private sector. There are the two types of the disinvestment which take place. One is the strategic sales and other one is minorities. Strategic sale and other one is minority sale. Basically, it is not now in the syllabus. In the strategic sales, only part of the operations has been shifted to the private sector, and in the minority sales, the whole of the shares has been, in the minority sales, only part of the shares has been flown in the market, in the stock exchange board to buy for the public. So only part of the company is transferred to the private sector or individual household. Even then households could buy the shares. But when I'm talking about strategic sales, the whole of the company has been transferred to the private big houses. The whole of the company's function has been transferred to it. So disinvestment is the only way of privatization, one of the way of privatization. So there's a disinvestment by the way of strategic sales, by the way of other things. Let me complete first this point. Definitely disinvestment leads to the privatization. Disinvestment is a strategy which we choose for the privatization. But privatization is a wider concept. When we open these are reserved sectors which were reserved for only public sector, for the private sector also, it is also a part of the privatization. So disinvestment is not a privatization. Disinvestment is a part of the way to achieve the privatization. Is it clear, Jyoti? Yes, definitely. Pushpendra Rana sir gave us a very good point, a very good suggestion. In case of GST and demonetization, we should ask the students to make their own research and let them discuss all the aspects. Definitely. Okay. Uh, Strategic sales, basically it's not in the NCRT now, but it was in the previous NCRT. Strategic sales, in the strategic sales, the whole of the company's operation or part of the company operations would sold to the single business house. For example, if there is a private sector industry, XYZ industry, let us suppose, let's take the example of MTNL. Let us suppose if MTNL's operations has been sold to a Jio, Reliance Jio, it would be considered as a strategic sales. Why? Because we sold it to the single, we give it to the single business house, single private sector. But on the other hand, if government decided to issue the shares of the MTNL for the more shares for the MTNL to the general public or allow it to open in the share market, to sell in the share market, it would be the minority sale. I hope this one is clear to you. Ritisha, is it clear? Okay, fantastic. Shelly, basically, under the strategic under the strategic sales, under the strategic sales, what happened? Government decided to sell the part of the operation or whole of the public sector enterprises to the single business house or the couple of the business house under the strategic sales. While when I'm saying about minority sales, only part of the shares has been sold to the private sector or to the public or to the business houses. However, control of the operation would remain with the private sector with the greater autonomy only. Any other specific doubt? Uh, can we say COVID will lead to the deglobalization? No, definitely it is not going to be deglobalization. In fact, for China, it may be the deglobalization. COVID is not going to be lead to the deglobalization. In fact, we have to be take the advantage as an Indian economy should take the advantage of this COVID-19 because lot of the industries from the China is want to move out from China because their government going to be taking very tough decisions after this problem has been solved against the China because the whole world is putting the responsibility on China for this COVID-19 and definitely their foreign policy towards China is going to be more stricter which makes the industries of their country to work in China very difficult. So that's why India is going to be get the benefit of it, of this globalization. So it is not going to be deglobalization. Yep, it could be deglobalization for the China only, I guess. Yep, ownership right and control as well as control given to the private sector. Perfect. So we are reaching towards the other topic. Rahul, आप अपना माइक you can open your mic and ask me the question please. It is not visible while estimating national income. We exclude indirect tax and include subsidies. But many author and CBSE marking scheme says that CBSE will not be included as it is a transfer income. Okay. Rahul, subsidies is not included, it's a transfer payment, it is a correct answer. We added subsidy into the factor cost just to nullify its effect. Because subsidy reduces the market price. Assume that I want to sell a product for rupees 100 in the market. just because of the government subsidy. Government gives me the rupees 20, so I am able to sell it for rupees 80. So subsidy reduces its prices. So when I going to calculate factor cost, I am adding it back. Just what I am doing, nullifying its effects, because it should not be subtracted for the very first time, because it's a transfer payment, and as a factor of production I am getting it, as a factor cost I am getting it. So it should not be subtracted for the very first time. But in order to national income, since in the market price it has already been subtracted, in order to nullify its effect, we are adding it. Just to nullify its effect, we are adding it. It does not mean that it should be included in the national income. But when I am talking about to ask the specific question, you should ask the specific question regarding the topic only which we are teaching. Please. Okay, fantastic. So students, now, oh sorry, so teachers and fellow colleagues, friends, being a teacher, it always happens. So, okay, as there is a no specific doubt, I guess we could have reached to the other topic. Thank you. Please, I'm definitely everybody appreciate good points and good remarks. But please restrict the chat towards asking questions only, because otherwise some of the important messages may be goes on. Sunika ma'am, basically we are going to be discuss very two chapters only. After that we are going to be start the second session very soon. Second session very soon. Just give me 5-10 minutes in order to explain that, so that teachers who are coming for the subject knowledge as well as the topics, they should have get the purpose solved. Otherwise, don't worry Sonika ma'am, I would provide the video lecture of using the next session also. Okay, thank you ma'am. Now we are talking about the current challenges faced by the Indian economy. And my one request to each and every teacher, please, when you explain the students the lecture, divide the lecture into 10 to 15 minutes part. After every 15-minute part, take a 5-minute question answer session with the students. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for students to maintain their focus for a longer period in online classes. It is really very difficult for the student to maintain the focus in the online classes. So after 10 or 15 minutes, you should ask the question. They would get the load of the benefit, and many times they would enjoy it more than the face-to-face class when you do this. Okay, so I am talking about current challenges faced by the Indian economy. When we are talking about the current challenges, many teachers told me, so it's a very boring topic. No, it's not a boring topic. It's a very interesting topic. And definitely it's a very challenging for us to teach this topic. Because when I'm talking about the challenges faced by Indian economy, I'm talking about poverty, human capital formation, rural development, employment, infrastructure, and sustainable development. So these are the things which we are going to be discussing in the current challenges. Anybody want to ask a question? Somebody has his mic open. Okay. So most of the students may not take the interest in the chapter of poverty. How could we create that interest among the students? Just ask the students how much amount they spent in a month, how much fees they paid for their school, how much amount they spent on their stationery, how much amount they spent on their refreshment, how much amount they spend on their recreational facilities, how much amount they spend on their mobile recharge. When you ask them, and after that tell them, if a person is earning more than rupees 1000, then he is not a poor. I am talking about per capita income. After that, he would start taking interest in, because it would be really very difficult for the student to understand the poverty, because most of the students reside, there are very few students in the CBSE schools who studies in the villages, yeah, who resides in the villages. When I'm talking about CBSE only. So it will be very difficult for the students to understand the poverty when 80% of the poor resides in villages only. 80% of poor of India resides in the villages only. It is very difficult for students to understand the poverty, concept of poverty for rupees, but when they live in the one of the luxurious houses and they are getting the all of the good education, and even then the school fees they paid, with the help of that monthly school fees, 4% maybe come out of the poverty according to the government definition. Just explain them. Okay, a study trip can be organized. Definitely, it's a very good example, but it would be very difficult for student to understand, because in a cities a rickshaw wala could have earned more than rupees 1000. So that's why it is a very difficult to explain to the students what exactly the poverty is. So definitely explain them who the poor is. After that, they would understand that even the survival of the poor itself is a miracle. Explain them the poverty data. Tell them 80% of the poor resides in the villages, and it's the 20% who resides in the cities. Even then, from 73, 74, the data is same. So students, explain them the poverty data, then ask them what could be the possible reason of this poverty. What will the possible reason of this poverty? What are the causes of the poverty? Ask them. And ask them what could be the policies, if they would be in the government, would be taken place in order to remove the poverty. After that, discuss about the critical assessment. They definitely going to be take the very interest in this chapter once they understand what exactly the poverty is, what are the causes of poverty. But before explaining them poverty, how to measure the poverty, just explain them rupees 1000 in the city. If a person is earning 1000 per capita income, if the person has 1000 per capita income in a city and A64 in the villages, then he is not a poor at all. Then definitely they will take the interest in the chapter and will surprise you in many ways. I am 100% sure. So, I guess poverty chapter is really very easy, because if I am talking about the poverty chapter, what does the poverty chapter includes? Poverty chapter basically, who are the poor? These are the topics which is, I am talking about the poverty chapter. I am opening the topics of the poverty chapter. After introduction, these are the, on the screen you are able to see the topics. How are the poor identified? First of all, explain them who are poor. Explain them poverty data, cause of poverty, government policies and government poverty alleviation program, as well as critical alleviation of the poverty alleviation program. Here you should have explained them to make your work easy, that all of the employment generation program is also a poverty alleviation program. So you should have explained them here it only. If there is any specific doubt, you should have asked me. Example of case study questions is very simple. Definitely we will discuss it. But we will discuss it, Shushila ma'am, only after the online session. Many teachers are waiting for the online session, ki how to take the classes online, how to conduct the test online. Many persons are interested in that. Definitely. So after that we will take this question of case study, or I will provide you in the notes. I am going to provide you all of these things, all of the material which I am using while giving you this lecture, all the study material, all the PPTs. I am going to provide all these things to all of you by tomorrow. So please, by tomorrow you all will get all those things. So don't worry, even then you will get the recorded lecture of this seminar also. Okay, Meenu ma'am, it is not very difficult of jail of cost of living index. Dadabhai Narozi definitely introduced it. You can teach it as some extra knowledge, even though they are not going to be asked you in the exam, because he is the very first person who even tried to measure the poverty in India. It's a Dadabhai Narozi. He is a very big person, very good economist. His contribution towards the economy is unparalleled. Definitely, you should have explained them. It's a very simple and it will take only 1 minute to explain them. Let me explain you. In the jail of cost living index, it will take only 1 minute. What the Dadabhai Narozi did, he considered how much amount is spent on a prisoner in the British jails, and taking that base, because they assumed that the prisoner will get only basic minimum needs. So definitely on that base, he calculated the poverty, how to measure the poverty jail of cost of living index. In that case, he assumed that 2/3 of the population, half of the population may be adult. So that's why half of the population would get the would need the full amount spent on the prisoner. So half of the population is adult, so that's why need of the half of the population would be same as of the adult. In fact, 2/3 population they used it. Please correct me if I am wrong. I'm not very sure. And out of that, remaining 1/3, half would be the infants, half of 1/3 would be the infant, and they consider their consumption level as a nil, and half of 1/3 took as a consumption equal to the half of full. So definitely it will reach to the 3/4 of full. You could have explained it. You could have explained it to the student. It is not going to be take much time, but definitely they are not going to be asked it in the examination. Poverty line, basically I am going to tell you, it's a very good question asked by Rajni Bajaj. Rajni Bajaj asked us, how does the poverty line is measured, identified in India, fixed in India? Poverty line, how does poverty line fixed in India? Basically in 1978 or 79, task force on the projection of minimum needs of the effective consumption demand has been established. On the basis of that task force, it has been established that the persons who is residing, I opened this thing on the screen also. If the person is residing in the rural India, it needs the 2400 calories of the food. While if he is residing in the urban India, because in urban India lesser labor work is required, that's why a person must need the 2100 calories per day food. So on the basis of this task force on the projection of minimum needs and effective consumption demand, government decided how much amount a person needed to get a calories of 2400 in village, and how much amount is the cities would a person need to spend to get a calories of 2100. On the basis of that, this poverty line has been fixed. So poverty line is a something different. Monthly per capita consumption, it is based on the monthly per capita consumption expenditure, but it is fixed on the basis of task force on the projection of minimum needs and effective consumption demand. I hope this one is clear. It is not dumped, it is not revised, Avinash. Uh, because government stopped showing the figures of the poverty and somehow employment also from some time, it doesn't mean that the idea is dumped. It is in the books, but it is depend upon the government when they are going to be uh, publish it pictures, figures. Any other doubt? So Rajni, okay,
I was going, excuse me, sir.
yeah,
That was a research paper I was finding it, sir.
Okay.
In that, they have discussed about multi-dimensional poverty index, MPI, sir.
okay,
At this time, maybe I don't have the full knowledge. That was a brief introduction. In 2020 itself, I have gone with that, and government Niti Aayog is planning for a new concept, sir.
definitely,
Maybe, yeah.
definitely. Uh,
Thank you, sir.
please tell me your name, please.
I'm Avinash, sir. from
Avinash.
Jaipur.
Okay. Avinash sir put out a very important point. Basically, there are the drawbacks in the
Yeah.
there are the drawbacks in the identifying the monthly per capita consumption expenditure. When we are talking about, when we teach the students about the poverty line, we also teach them about the drawbacks of the poverty line. In the poverty line, there are the many important elements which is not considered while calculating the this. For example, if I am talking about drawback and limitations, the problem is that education is not considered, how much amount is needed to spend on the education. Health is not considered. There are the clothes and basically sanitation facilities. These things are not considered when identifying, when determining this poverty line. So that's why government is planning to change the criteria and basis of the fixing the poverty line, but it is only on the papers and in planning.
Right, sir.
It is only on the planning. Nothing conclusive has been come out till now. But definitely we already covered it. We should in fact cover it in the drawbacks of the poverty line.
That is up to us ki how we should give the students, sir. We have to go as per NCERT in the curriculum. So we will consider it is there, sir.
Definitely.
In that I was finding cooking fuel is also included. They are thinking.
Is,
because
is it
certain
given in the
states-
NCRT? I do have a doubt.
Even in certain states, because now medical facilities are free
No,
of cost available.
Avinash, you are right. But this is still in the planning and nothing conclusive policy has been implemented by the government.
Agreed, sir. Agreed. 100% agreed.
Okay. Okay, that's why. And if it is mentioned in the NCRT, maybe possible I missed in the new NCRT, it may be best present, but it is not presented there. As long as last time I saw, Pushpinder sir will help me to tell me.
It is not in books, sir. Our
Okay.
books is not.
Definitely we should teach the students. These are the drawbacks and these should be included while determining the poverty line. Definitely. It's always a good idea. Any other doubt?
Sir, I want to ask one question.
Yes.
Students often ask us ki how many figures they have to learn in Indian economy. Like in last chapter, comparison between China, India, and Pakistan, it is full of figures. So, what do we tell them? Are they supposed to learn all the figures for board exams?
In fact, infrastructure and employment also has a lot of the figures. Employment has a lot of the figures. It is really very difficult for students to learn. And the good thing is that students need not to be learn the figures at all. However,
Okay.
however, if they spot their answer with the help of figure, it is a added advantage for the students. Answer, it is like a jewel. However, no marks is going to be deducted if student is not spotting his answer with the help of figure. But without spotting figures, it would be really very difficult for the student to explain the answer. So I could say that if the answer is presented with the help of couple of figures, data, in a one paragraph, and the other answer is presented in order to get the same marks, student has to be at least give 2 or 3 paragraphs to get the same marks to in order to get full marks or to do the justice with the answer. So there are the certain types, there are the certain figures which we could have asked them to learn voluntarily so that they can put in the answer. However, they are not going to be penalized for not writing the figures.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, welcome. Okay, so this point is clear to you. So now we are coming on the last topic. After that, we are going to be discuss the part of technological part, how to conduct the online classes, taking the test, and other type of tools which you could have used. Human capital formation is very important part. In fact, one of the way to remove the poverty, to elevate the poverty forever, it's not by providing them the some of the subsidies and other things. To enable the poor to remain out of the poverty, human capital formation is very important. Just ask the student how many of them knows to use the PPT. If couple of the student, maybe possible, where every student should know how to prepare the PPT. If couple of the student has no knowledge, ask them whether it will be difficult for them to present the answer or to give the presentation or to participate in the competition without the knowledge of the PPT. In a very similar way, NCERT gives us a very good example of the two farmers. One farmer with the proper education and having the knowledge of the modern technology could have produced more as compared to the farmer who has a no knowledge or the new not access to the modern technology. So that's why when you are talking about human capital formation, first of all we should have explained, give the idea to the student what exactly the human capital formation is, what exactly the human capital is, and how does the knowledge, how does the human capital formation could have been formed. Without giving them actual knowledge, without starting the chapter, just ask them how a person could have earned more as compared to the other, how a person could be more productive as compared to the other. When you give them this fair idea and ask them before class, in fact before starting, if you want to start class tomorrow, give them task today. How can a person become more productive without telling them you are going to be teach them in the next chapter. So student will come up with a load of the ideas and you will be surprised that some of the students are, you are going to be proud on some of the students with the solution they come up with. So human capital formation is also a very important topic. However, it is very easy because in this we are supposed to teach them what is a human capital, what is a human capital formation, also teach them difference between the human capital and physical capital. What are the sources of human capital? Expenditure on education, expenditure on migration, expenditure on health. Even though I want to suggest all of you, please do one thing and incorporate it in your education and your plan. Add the health in the human capital formation itself. You will get the notes of the health in the infrastructure topic. So add the health in this chapter. Teach the student about the expenditure on health and Indian health sector in India in this chapter only. So this chapter could be divided into the 6 parts easily. Explain them the human capital and physical capital, human capital formation, what are the sources of human capital, what is the relationship between the human capital and economic growth. Also education sector in India, health sector in India. I am changing the screen because the camera has been off. Okay. I am here only. Definitely I am going to change the battery very soon. So let's discuss it without my face. However, it is not going to be put anything productive. It's just a feeling that we are giving online classes, face-to-face classes. So after that, there are the 2 points which should be introduced very importantly: education sector in India and health sector in India. Health sector is not available in this chapter, but it is available in the subsequent chapter. So explain them about the health sector in India. Any type of doubts about this chapter? I am rushing it out because I want to start next session very soon. Good. I am taking a 2-minute break in order to change the battery, please. And in fact, we are taking 5-minute break before the second chapter, before the second session. Everyone, it's a 5-minute break for the second session. You can get your drink, coffee, tea, etc. because only 20 minutes is left for the session. I want to start second session very soon. Okay. Everyone, basically there was a question asked by the person about the Bloom's taxonomy. When we look at the CBSE examination pattern, they always gives us the point of view what type of the question they are going to be asked, and they also allocate the marks in the same. Basically, it's a Bloom's taxonomy which divides the type of the knowledge into different parts. For example, when I am getting the knowledge, when I am acquiring the knowledge, our knowledge could have been depend upon the remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating and creating. All these are the part of the our knowledge. So when we test the students on the basis of all these parts, on the basis of their remembrance, their knowledge of understanding, their knowledge of applying the knowledge which they understand it, to apply it, to get the result, to analyze it, to evaluate it and to create it. In fact, CBSE had allocating the marks of 44 marks on the basis of remember and understanding. It means 44 marks in the exams out of 80 would be depend upon the remember and understanding. It means on the basis of memory and on the basis of understanding. Okay, so that's why I'm going to share these type of the questions with you very soon. After that, application, on the application base, there are the 18 marks. And after that, on the analysis, evaluating and creating base, it's the 18 marks. So 44, 18 and 18. 80 marks examination will be divided into these three types. So whenever we create the questions and take the test, we should make the weightage according to this only, 44, 18 and 18. This weightage would be perfect. So I am starting it. The very first question, please ask me the questions. Most of the teachers, can you tell me what are the technologies which you people are using while giving online education? Or you want to know about the technology, please? Okay. How can the test be conducted? Definitely we are going to discuss it. Okay. Everyone, okay, got it. There are the different type of technologies available to you. However, if I am talking about complete package would have been provided with the help of Google Classroom. It's an app which every teacher can use. I am going to tell you the benefit. Second one is Google Meet. And Google Calendar. All these three are the very easy to use. They have their own advantages. First advantage is that we can create the recurring class with a single link. That's why every time no new link is need to be created, and we can invite the students and students can attend the class very easily. And in the Google Classroom, you can upload the assignment You can upload the assignment and give the link of the test from the students. And if anybody want to know how to use it, I can give you the demonstration itself. And in Google Calendar, when you give the Google Calendar, student can get the notification from there and they can attend the class anytime. Any person who is not able to attend this thing, and same in the WebEx, definitely. All of these things are the same. If any teacher has a problem in using it, you should have asked me first. Everything, if you are comfortable with the software you are using, you should continue use it. There is no need to change. Okay, Miss Anu, you want a demo of which part? A demo of which part, please? Demo of what? Of these apps. Okay. Basically, I am telling you, when you click this 9 dots along with your mail, you get the load of the options here, and if it is not showing to you, you can see it from more from Google. You will find out the option of classroom. When you click on the classroom, so when you open the Google Classroom, they may ask you this sign, they may ask you to create the new class. You can create the class, you can ask the class or make the settings. This is for my daughter, it's of my daughter, I am creating a class. I am opening a new thing so that I could have explained you with the detail. In all these apps are free. All these apps are free. There would be the plus sign here. If it is visible to you, on the right hand side, please, there is a mic open of somebody. On the right hand side, first sign would be of the symbol. It is not visible here, but the plus sign is visible to you. When you create the plus sign, and you can create the class here. After that, on this class, you can create the class name. For example, you want to create economic class. You can create the section, humanities, let us suppose. You can create the subject, okay, let us suppose it's class 12th. You can create the subject, economics. You can name the room name, 1, 2, 3, you can name the, by this way you can create the classroom. When you create the classroom, in this classroom you can share everything with the students. Wait for a minute, they are creating it. With this type of classroom, in this classroom you can share the classwork, assignment, taking the test of the students from this classroom. You can, in fact, you can see, if you want to share something with your students, you can write your message, you can give the messages to the students, you can give the homework to them, and there is an option of attach, add. Here, if you see at this add option, you can file the attachment of the file from your computer for your notes or assignments to the students so that they can read it. After that, in the classwork stream when you go, you can here create the, when you write the create, you can create the quiz assignment. When you create the quiz assignment, they will ask you, give you the form here itself. You do not have to go anywhere, you can create the quiz here only. For example, this is the quiz format. When you click it, you can create the quiz here very simply. How beautiful it is. For example, is it clear to you? I am writing here quiz question. It is clear to you? So it's a multiple choice question. checkbox, drop down, there are the different type of option which is given to you. If it's a multiple choice question, you could have clicked the multiple choice question. You can ask the subjective question, but it is really very difficult for student to type the answer. After that, there is a option 1. You can write here yes, option 2, and you can add another option. Sorry, no, or maybe. So these are the options which you have added. Up after that, answer key. Are you going to be provide answer key? If it is required, then it is okay. Add answer feedback. You can write the answer. Answer is yes, and you can give the reason. You can add your video in order to explain it, and you can add the supported material of that quiz. After it, save it. So by this way, you can create the quiz of the multiple questions, and in fact, you can assign the marks to them, to the student. When you explore it, you can create the quiz here only. You do need not to be open any Google form or from anywhere. You can create it here only, and you can take the test of your students by giving them assigned or allotting them that time. Is it clear to you? Or you need again explanation? There are the settings in the description form, or go to section based question. You can go for the description, you can give the answer. Also you are asking about the you can click the time here also, ki how much time it is required. You can allot the time here also. You can give the time, it will be gives you the option to allot the time. So definitely you can give the time and allot the time to the whole quiz. It's the option here, it will give you. How can you allot the time? Look here. It's a time option which is given to you after the quiz. You could have sent it to the Google form and create it and ask them. No, definitely not. After completing the quiz, you can give the time, whole time to the quiz also. In fact, there are the very beautiful things also available here in this. What you could have done, you can restrict the student to open the other window. You can restrict the student to open the other window. Yeah, auto check option is also there. All the options would be also there. In this setting, please create the quizzes and create the settings. You would get all the options here in the setting. A little bit exploring would help you. Share screen is not here, and I don't think so कि we should share the screen with the student. Share screen option is not there, but definitely in Zoom it is available there. How to make teaching interesting? It is very important question. Definitely it looks load of the labor. Already your work has been increased, but if you want to make your lecture very interesting, what you should have done, you should have created the quizzes and questions in advance. Once you create the quizzes and questions in advance, even though you could make the assignment and share it with the students online, after 10 and 15 minutes lecture, when you decided, you should ask the questions with the students and give them a quick fire answer. Even then they could have chatted. If you don't want to move from the to attend the distract from the class and to go to the other window and give the quiz, you can ask them to give the answer on your online chat session itself. What you should have done, you should have created the PDF file in advance and asked the questions from the student and asked them and told them the first one who gives the right answer would definitely getting more marks. So definitely it will encourage them to make them into the it will encourage them to participate in the class. Every time give some prize to the student who is more engaging. The student who is more engaging, asking, giving the answers, yes, no, giving responses, should be, that student should be rewarded. Rewarded by the good remarks, rewarded by your appreciation, rewarded by the way of star, rewarded by the applause. You could have give him the good, definitely, you should have rewarded. So this will make the students more attentive in the class. Yes, definitely there are the different types of the question. When you ask the question, let us suppose I want to add more question. You can ask the question, whether it is multiple question, checkbox question, every type of question would be available there. We are going to be launch a very good session, new session with. Definitely, we will give them. Okay. We will conduct more of these sessions because I want to discuss a lot of the things with you, but somehow I am able to discuss only 4 or 5 chapters. But I will share all these notes with you, each and every one of you. Any other query? And thank you so much. Time has been, it's already 6 o'clock. And I will share a link with you. Please share your feedbacks and definitely help me to improve my next webinar. Thanks a lot, everyone. You could have asked me your personal doubts, your personal problems, definitely. Thank you each and every one of you. Bye, take care. I will provide you the definitely video lecture very soon. Vinita ma'am, lecture has been over and you are coming back. Definitely I'm waiting for your feedbacks in the groups, in the different groups from which you get this information. Thank you, all of you. We will conduct next session very soon. Very soon. Mr. Prashant, very soon we will conduct next session. Thank you so much. Definitely I would help you. Definitely I will help you, all of you. See you again, definitely. It's really very enjoyable session and such a fantastic attendance. Again, ma'am, I will mail each and every one of you, each one of you. I will mail you each one of you for the next session. Thank you, ma'am. It's really nice. Definitely. Thank you. I'm looking forward for your feedbacks in the groups. Definitely, ma'am. Definitely, I will mail you. I will mail you. Thank you, each one of you. Many attendees are attending the session. At the end of this, I don't know what to do. Okay, bye. Take care, each one of you. Bye, everyone. Please, bye. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful experience for me also. Thank you, Meena ma'am.
Pleasure is all ours, sir. Students so much of effort.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Please give me the feedback. Definitely, I will send you the feedback form to each one of you.
Pleasure interacting with you, sir.
It was all pleasure. Our pleasure is mine, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe. Stay safe, sir.
Bye. Bye, ma'am. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sushila ma'am.
Hi, Kapil sir.
Hello,
Thank
sir.
you. Thanks a lot for such a interesting session. We
Uh,
learned a lot from you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. It's really nice. I'm really honored with your presence, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Very good evening.
It was wonderful and interesting session.
Thank
We
you.
have some doubts, sir. Please clear.
Definitely, you should ask me doubt. In fact, now.
Sir, what is the poverty line, sir, in non-income basis?
What is a poverty line called on income basis? Monthly per
Income basis. The old data is given in the book, sir.
data is basically if I data available in the books is right. At present, the same poverty line government is using the same poverty line. New poverty line is not implemented till now. Monthly per capita.
Income, sir. On the basis of income, sir.
It is 1,000 for the rural urban India and 816 in the rural area per month. I opened it for you.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bye. Take care. Definitely, ma'am. Definitely, I will. I will do it. Because I had a wonderful attendees. That's why, ma'am, it was a wonderful session. Bye, everyone.